Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatihira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Kacharya Shtotra Shata Shishmat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Kacharya Shtotra Shata Shishmat His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Gangamai Yamunamai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, verse 20. Api svit akrita sukritam agatya mam sukaya ishyati harina raja kumaro vividha ruchira darshaniya nija mriga daraka vinodair asantosham svanam apanudam. Word by word translation. Api svit, whether it will. Akrita sukritam, who has never executed any pious activities. Agatya, coming back. Mam, to me. Sukaya ishyati, give pleasure. Hari Naraja Kumara, the deer who was just like a prince because of my taking care of it exactly like a son. Vivira, various. Ruchira, very pleasing. Darshaniya, to be seen. Nija, own. Mrigadaraka, befitting the calf of the deer. Vinodai, by pleasing activities. Asantusham, the unhappiness. Svanam, of his own kind. Apanudam, driving away. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. That deer is exactly like a prince. When will it return? When will it again display its personal activities, which are so pleasing? When will it again pacify a wounded heart like mine? I certainly must have no pious assets, otherwise the deer would have returned by now. Purport, short purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Out of strong affection, the king accepted the small deer as if it were a prince. This is called moha. Due to his anxiety over the deer's absence, the king addressed the animal as though it were his son. Out of affection, anyone can be addressed as anything. One more time the translation. That deer is exactly like a prince. When will it return? When will it again display its personal activities, which are so pleasing? When will it again pacify a wounded heart like mine? I certainly must have no pious assets, otherwise the deer would have returned by now. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaura Bhakta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we continue going through the story of Bharata Maharaj. And we were saying previous time how he left the kingdom when he was very young. He left so many objects which were unnatural objects of attachment, even strong attachment. And after going to the forest and after being completely absorbed in his spiritual practice, the king gradually became very attached to this small deer. Today's verse is very poetic, very deep and strong emotions are expressed in the way how Bharata Maharaj is speaking. And I was thinking that this really very much reminds me of the way how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking when he was in Jagannath Puri, the last years of his life, when he was not so much active in the society anymore. Rather, he was very, very, very deeply absorbed in his internal feelings of love to Krishna. And some of his statements are similar to this one. However, Srila Prabhupada is telling us that in this case, these emotions, these feelings are actually, Srila Prabhupada is saying, this is called moha, illusion. And in the case of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is the perfect way to achieve perfection. There is a famous verse from third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Devahuti is speaking to Kardama Muni, and one of the verses she is saying is that being attached to the material objects of sense gratification is the greatest bondage. And if one is able to adjust his attachment instead being directed towards the objects of sense gratification, direct the same attachment towards the saintly personalities, this becomes the cause for his liberation. So in this case, both in the case of Bharata Maharaj and the case of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we see very strong emotions and very strong feelings, but the one case, Srila Prabhupada is saying, is a material illusion and will lead to one result, and later we'll hear what will be this result. Bharata Maharaj will have to be born again in this material world, and not even in a human form of life, but rather animal form of life as deer. And in the other case, namely the case of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this becomes the reason for complete perfection. Emotions and feelings which are directed towards Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So we one of the reasons why actually Bharat Maharaj is giving so much attention and affection in the beginning were his feelings of compassion. He saw this small deer in a difficult situation, and protection was needed, and the king acted and saved the animal. Now he could make his choice. He saved the animal, and from this moment he could just say, okay, let now the Supreme Lord, who is the supreme controller and protector of everyone, take care for this animal, and I'll just continue seriously with my spiritual practice. Or he could choose, well, now I have some duty. I have to really take care of this animal because nobody is there to take care. So that's my duty. And Bharat Maharaj chose the second option. So his feelings of compassion were very, very good. And actually, this is a symptom of elevated spiritual personality. As a general, spiritual people, they are very compassionate. However, at some point, his compassion became misplaced compassion. He put it in a place where actually this compassion starts working against his own best interest, against his own spiritual progress. And we see similar situation in Bhagavad Gita with Arjuna in the beginning, when he is giving the different reasons to Krishna why he will not fight. And one of these reasons is compassion. He's saying why we have to fight against our relatives, against our cousins and brothers and teachers and grandfathers. Why we have to do that? Just to gratify our own senses. And even Arjuna is using the famous name of Krishna, Govinda, and Srila Prabhupada is explaining in the purport that by using this name Govinda, Arjuna actually means, my dear Krishna, why you are refusing to render pleasure to my senses by putting me in a good position for me? Why you're putting me in this bad position? But Srila Prabhupada is saying, actually, Govinda means we are meant to give pleasure to the senses of Krishna, and not he to give pleasure to our senses. So Bharat Maharaj, in a similar way, at some point he had to make this choice. He was in front of this dilemma, what to do. Shall I give preference to my spiritual practice as before, or rather leave behind a little bit my spiritual practice and give my priority attention to this animal, this deer, and take care of it? And then his conclusion was, well, if I put my spiritual practice on the first place, this will be selfish because this is for me. And now I have to give all my time and attention for this animal, and this will be actually the real compassion. Now, this logic is there is truth behind this logic. It's a good logic, but where was actually the problem with this logic? The problem was that yes, if he would put to some extent his spiritual practice in order to help other living entity or living entities in a spiritual way, this would be worthy. But actually he left his spiritual practice behind just to take materially for this animal, because at the end of the day, that was animal. He couldn't really benefit it much spiritually. Of course, we know some material benefit can be there, because the animals, they can hear chanting of the holy names of the Lord, or they can take prasadam. Some benefit can be there. But at the end of the day, it was an animal. So he compromised his spiritual practice for the sake of taking care, predominantly materially, for this animal. And as a result, he developed his attachment. And as a result, his spiritual practice started going down. And he became spiritually weak. So Srila Prabhupada, that's why he's saying that was moha. He became influenced by delusion. Srila Prabhupada is saying the real compassion means being compassionate not to the body, being compassionate to the soul, to the living entity itself. And in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada gives this famous example of trying to save the person by saving his clothes. Someone is drowning and you go next to him and you pull out his whatever t-shirt or pants and put them on the shore, and you're saying, oh, I save him, I save him, I save him. That's not the real way how you're saving someone. The real way someone to be safe is by really taking care for his spiritual needs. So this is important lesson for us. We should remember this, take some note that we should be very serious about our spiritual practice, and we should not easily make compromises with it. Sometimes compromises will be there because we are living in this material world, and it's unavoidable that in the material world you have to handle few balls at the same time. Our spiritual life, our spiritual practice, and our material survival. So sometimes we have to give priority to one, and our spiritual practice goes a little bit behind, but then immediately we have to catch up. So we have to keep the things balanced. So this is one point I wanted to make, that we have to stay strong in our spiritual life and our spiritual practice. The stronger we are, we'll be able to help other people. Srila Prabhupada is saying in his conversation with Bob Cohen in the famous book, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, this topic comes out, and Srila Prabhupada is saying, first you have to save yourself, and then you can save others. First, you should be able to swim nicely, and then you can help others who are in the water and have problems swimming. So devotees by nature, they are compassionate, and devotees by nature, they want to help others. But again, we have to first make sure that our spiritual life is strong and our spiritual practice is proper, and we are nicely situated. And then, of course, we can help. Now, of course, to balance this, we should say that sometimes it doesn't take much to help someone. So it may be done, and sometimes it should be done, just seeing others in a great suffering. Do something if you can help, especially if it's about saintly personalities or devotees. If we can help, even materially, it is very much advised to help, to help other devotees, because at the time of the day, sometimes, very often, we judge about how much people do care of us, if they are willing to help us in a difficult situations. And these difficult situations, they're not only spiritual, they are also material. So especially if we see devotees in need and we can help, we're in a position to help spiritually and materially, do. It's very much recommendable to do this for the Vaishnavas, and this will bring us great spiritual asset, credit in our life. Now, the second thing I wanted to speak again related with this topic is that as a practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, we know that actually spiritual life and devotional service, they are meant for the Supreme Lord, for Krishna. And this is the real object of worship, of meditation, the real object where we have to put our thoughts, our mind. Sri Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is giving the definition for pure devotional service, and it's very, very famous definition. Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmadhi anavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir tama. So now this definition is important and is interesting, not only because it describes pure devotional service, but also this definition explains what means devotional service at all. And acharyas are explaining that there are 5 symptoms or 5 characteristics described in this definition. 3 of them are showing what means devotional service. And the first 3 of them, plus the second 2, or altogether 5, they describe what means pure devotional service. So in order one activity to be considered for devotional service and pure devotional service, this prerequisite should be there. 3 for devotional service and 5 for pure devotional service. Otherwise, everybody can come and he can say, oh, I'm a very spiritual person, I'm engaged in spiritual activities, I'm very strong devotee of the Lord. But if these are not there, that means he is not performing devotional service. And if these 5 symptoms are not there, that means he's not performing pure devotional service. So which are those symptoms or characteristics of devotional service? So let's first describe the first 3. Devotional service is meant for Krishna. And this is the main point that we are discussing here. Spiritual activity should be meant for the pleasure of the Lord, for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, acharyas are broadening this little bit by saying that Krishna includes also all the incarnations of Krishna. So whether you do something for the pleasure of Krishna or Narasimha or Rama or Vamana or Balaram, you get the same spiritual benefits. This activity will be considered devotional service. And also in this category are included the devotees of the Lord. Doing something for the devotees of the Lord is also devotional service. So it's a little bit broad category, Krishna and his expressions and his attributes. Devotees are considered attribute of the Lord. Tadyanam samarchanam. Lord Shiva is explaining to his wife Parvati, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnur aradhanam param. Tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarchanam. Of all kinds of worship, the greatest worship is the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But oh my Devi, my goddess, Parvati, know from me that there is worship even greater than the worship of the Lord. And this is the worship of Tadyanam Samarchanam. Attributes of the Lord, or the devotees of the Lord, those who are connected with the Supreme Lord. So, devotional service or the activity with which we are doing should be for the pleasure of Krishna, should be activity, should be action, anushilanam. In other words, Krishna consciousness is not just some sentimental feelings, but rather very much practical activity. And this practical activity should follow Guru Parampara, or the authority of the Shastra, Guru and Sadhu. Anushilanam. Anu means following the authority of Guru, Shastra and Sadhu. And Shilanam means action. So it should be a practical action. In Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada has all his purports are amazing, but the beginning of one purport is really amazing. I think it's the purport to verse 2 or 3. I'm not sure exactly which one of the two, but Srila Prabhupada is saying more or less, devotional service is not just imaginative ecstasy or mental speculation. It's a practical activity for the pleasure of the Lord. So it's action, and this action is authorized action. And then the third symptom, in order one activity to be considered devotional service, is should be done. So it's activity done for Krishna, should be done with favorable mood, favorable attitude. In other words, to give pleasure to the Supreme Lord, positive attitude. So if these three are there, this activity will be considered devotional service. And if not, then it is not devotional service. And we may say, wait a minute, it is devotional service because I think it is devotional service, but things does not work like that. It's rather things work on the authority of the previous acharyas. So on the authority of Rupa Goswami, he defines what means devotional service. And these three symptoms should be there. Should be activity performed according to the authority of Shastra, Guru and Sadhu, should be for the pleasure of Krishna, and should be done with positive attitude. There were so many great demons who were constantly thinking about Krishna, like Kamsa or Shishupala, many others, but they are not considered devotees of the Lord. They were not doing devotional service. They were thinking about the Lord, and that was beneficial for them, but still their thinking of the Lord cannot be considered devotional service. Or Srila Prabhupada is also giving the example with Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha is incarnation of the Lord. So the logic says that, well, that means if someone is following the teachings of Lord Buddha, he should be performing devotional service. But Srila Prabhupada is saying no, because the teachings of Lord Buddha are not based on the authority of the Shastras, the Vedas. That's why, although someone may be serving Lord Buddha, his activity technically cannot be accepted as devotional service. So these were the prerequisites for performing devotional service. Now, in order one activity to become from devotional service, pure devotional service, two more things should be there. And these are Anya Abhilashita Shunyam, one should be free from any material desires. And namely, what are these material desires? Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. He should be free from mental speculation and desire for fruitive results. In other words, I serve, I do something for Krishna, it's according to Shastra, it's meant for the pleasure of Krishna with a positive mood, but I want to get something out of it. Then it will be activity which is devotional service, but it won't be considered pure devotional service because it's still selfish to an extent. We want something for ourselves. Or it will be mixed with different other material desires. So this will also put this kind of devotional service into the category of devotional service, but not pure devotional service. So anyway, I wanted to discuss this a little bit because, again, I think it is important when we are doing something to make spiritual advancement. From time to time, we have to take a little bit time and analyze ourselves, analyze what are we actually doing and why we are doing it. What is our motivation behind? And if our motivation is pure, the results will be better in a sense that we will experience more taste, more joy, more happiness in our performance of spiritual activities. And in if our motivation is not very, very pure, this may to some extent not allow us to experience great emotions and feelings during our spiritual practice. So that's why little bit philosophical approach and analyzing the things is good from time to time, so that we are sure that we are keeping on the right track with the right motivation, with the proper activities, and for the pleasure of the right person. And in this way, we will make sure that our gradual spiritual progress will be steady and strong. Okay, these were a few things I wanted to mention in regards to this verse. And maybe the last thing I will say before taking the some questions or comments. Previous time, the point came how Bharata Maharaj left his kingdom when he was very young. But then another verse was quoted by Tarka Prabhu, how actually he was ruling his kingdom for many, many thousands of years. So how these two they worked together? Well, I checked the verse where it is said that actually Bharata Maharaj left very early. And the words used there are, he left the kingdom in the prime of his youth, which, okay, means he was young, but taking in consideration that actually Bharata Maharaj was not ordinary personality, he was able to live for many, many years and at the same time be very, very young. So, yeah, in the prime of his youth, and still he was ruling the kingdom for many, many thousands of years. Anyway, that's just a comment for the previous time discussion. So thank you very much, dear devotees, for your kind attention. So now if you would like to say something or ask a question, Hare Krishna.
Tulsi Prabhu, thank you very much for resolving that issue. That had me scratching my head for a while, so it all makes good sense now. Thank you very much for remembering and taking the time to get an answer for us there. That was helpful. And thank you for today's class. Always nice to hear from you. I don't really have I don't really have a specific question or a comment, but I do want to thank you.
Thank you.
Krishna.
Yes, Agari Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for your insights on this verse today. So, yesterday I was reading from Madhura Kadambini, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about the characteristics of bhava, and one of them is mamata, or possessiveness, sense of this is my Lord. So even in before one gets to the platform of bhava, we see this characteristic of possessiveness. This is my service. I want to, there's a sense of ownership, taking more responsibility, taking more leadership. So you were talking about misplaced compassion. So my question is, can this mamata also be misplaced? When devotional service is mixed with the modes. So, for example, one could say, I am motivated to do my service because, or in other words, this isn't conscious, but subconscious. So when devotional service is mixed in with the lower modes, the false ego is present. So, for example, I could say my conditioned nature, I'm looking for things which are grand and glorious, and a sense of being part of a big picture. So then mamata can come in that, okay, this is my service, but then subconsciously my incentive is to, my motivation to work for the service of the Lord is to gain some kind of big position, so that I can feel significant. Or it could be motivated by, a sense of comfort. So if things like, and we've observed it here at the farm, if things aren't organized very nicely, then it basically, you see that mamata come out. So it's like, well, you're disturbing my service, because things, it's not organized nicely. Another motivation could be that as a devotee is, working here, it could be that, well, I'm doing this service because it's going to create a sense of livelihood. And so you take possession of the service. So one renders the service, but it comes at the price of this mixture that occurs. So how do we, purify these motivations that aren't part of the definition of devotional service, as you quoted, Anya Vilashita Shunya, where you're free from desire? Like, how do we avoid the pitfalls created by our false ego that basically cloud this possessiveness in devotional service?
Thank you very much. Very, very nice and very deep question. Well, first, in the same way how we were speaking about having two kinds of compassion, spiritual compassion and material compassion, so you could say in the same way you have two kinds of mamata, or the real possessive mentality of the liberated personalities, which are on the level of bhava or prema, and our mamata in our case, which is actually what your Prabhupada calls here. This is called moha, or illusion. because you enter into the consciousness of I'm the controller and I'm the enjoyer. That's why everything belongs to me. Ishvaroham aham bhogi, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita. So first, in case of the great personalities who are on the level of Bhava and Prema, Mamata, as far as I understand, refers to the idea that it mainly appears on the higher relationships with Krishna, namely friendship, parental relationship, and conjugal relationship. Because before that, when the devotee is in the mood of a servant of Krishna, he thinks, I belong to Krishna. I am property of Krishna, so he can do with me whatever he likes. Little bit, this is the mentality. If a devotee is very surrendered, but he is in a service relationship with Krishna, being a servant of Krishna, he thinks, I belong to Krishna. So he can do whatever he likes with me. But now, when devotee, because of his great love for Krishna, start acting in a friendly relationship or parental relationship or conjugal relationship, then this completely transcendental, pure spiritual feeling of possession of Krishna may appear. And then the devotee start thinking, Krishna is mine. And because he is mine, I can order him. I can, like the cowboys there, for example, they're saying to Krishna, okay, Krishna, now we are going to wrestle. And if I am the winner, you're going to carry me on your shoulders. Okay? Oh, the cowboys ordering to the Supreme Lord. Or Mother Yashoda, she's it's time for Krishna to take his lunch, but he is very busy playing outside with his friends, and she just goes outside and she's saying, Krishna, are you a street boy? Come immediately at home and sit down to eat your lunch. So she's able to approach Krishna in this way only because she has this mentality of Krishna is my child, belongs to me, and my duty is to take care of it. Like at some point, I think it was Nanda Maharaj. He was if I am correct, some Brahmana appeared in the dream of Nanda Maharaj and told him, hey, this is the Supreme Lord. You cannot act in such a way with him as like he is your child. He is Bhagavan, Parameshvara, origin of everything. And then the answer of Nanda Maharaj was, he may be the Supreme Lord, but still he is my son, and my duty is to give him proper education. So because he is my son, I have to do this. That's my duty. And also with the gopis, the way how Krishna reciprocates loving relationship with them. Like sometimes the gopis, like Srimati Radharani, becomes angry at Krishna. I mean, if you think you are a servant of Krishna, how are you going to become angry at him? Or you should have some feeling of possessiveness in order to be able to express such feelings. But of course, this is really cherished by Krishna. Krishna really experienced happiness from this relationship because everybody else is treating him as the Supreme Lord and honor and reverence, and huge distance, big distance between servant and master. And this kind of mentality of possessing Krishna actually gives the opportunity of the devotee to really come very close to Krishna. And then the feelings that are exchanged are much deeper and very intense, and Krishna enjoys this. Now, as we said in our case, problem is that maybe it's not just, this is not just coming out of spontaneous desire to do something for Krishna, rather it's just a way to lord over and control the material nature or the living entities, other living entities. So it may not be pure. Generally, it won't be pure. There will be some kind of contamination in Tamaguna or in Rajaguna or in Sattvaguna, but some contamination will be there. So some selfish motivation will be present there. Now, what to do about it? Well, one very practical thing that generally devotees advise to do to purify your motivation, and even if you have some feeling of possession for this is my service, to keep it pure, is you can always ask the devotees for advice. You can go to a close friend, a devotee, and ask him, can you observe me for some amount of time and give me some feedback? How am I doing in spiritual life? Do you notice something that is disturbing? Maybe my motivation is wrong. Maybe I'm not acting in a proper way while I'm performing my devotional service. So can you give me some feedback? This is super powerful. This is very, very good and very important actually in spiritual life, to ask devotees for feedback. I mean, practically speaking, every devotee should have at least 1 to very, very close friends in the devotee circles that he can just go to them anytime and just ask for advice or ask for feedback, ask for correction. And in this way, we'll be very properly situated in our spiritual life, because a good friend, a well-wisher, he'll give you good advice. It will be beneficial for us, this kind of advice. And then also, if we have possession about our service, okay, that's my service, I don't want to give it to anybody else. Well, that's a good mentality for a beginning in spiritual life. Why? Because it shows some attachment to our devotional service. So that's good. The attachment to devotional service is good. It's appreciated. But still, when the devotee makes even further advancement in spiritual life, he'll develop a little bit different idea about being possessed of his service. What is that? Well, sharing his service with others. Because this is my service and I want to make my service perfect. Okay, how can I improve? How can I increase my devotional service? Well, by engaging many others in this devotional service. Then how much Krishna will be more happy. So actually being very much in possession of our devotional service does not exclude the idea that we can engage many, many other people to help us in making spiritual advancement. Okay, so I think these are some thoughts in this regards. I hope they are helping. Hare Krishna. Okay, so looks like that's it for today. I wish you a good day, dear devotees. Keep your mind on Krishna. Engage your senses in Krishna service. And stay strong in Krishna consciousness and stay happy also in Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much for this opportunity again. Hare Krishna, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Radha Damodar jai, Shishi Gornitai ki jai, Gaura Premanandi.
Very good. Thank you, Prabhu, for that very detailed response. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice question.